Thank you for joining us today for this Digital Leaders Public Sector Innovation Week session. In this section, we will be exploring how place-based digital technology and data can enhance park resilience, improve the health and well-being of local communities, and help us to achieve many of our local, regional, and national policy objectives. Our presenter today, Dr. Jo Morrison, is an expert in the research and design of location-based digital products, services, and experience that enhances people's relationship with places. Jo is Director of Digital Innovation and Research at Calvium, working at the intersection of digital innovation, design, research, and business. Calvium is a digital innovation agency who delivers research, design, and software engineering to serve people, place, and planet. So please put any questions that you think of in the comments down below, and we'll answer them towards the end of the session. So if this presentation sparks some ideas with you, resonates with your thinking, please also give us a like down below. Thank you. So without further ado, over to you, Jo.
Thanks very much, Marissa. And I shall now hopefully share my screen. It's great that you're all here today. Okay, so let's start with a summary of Calvium in terms of the ways that we work. And we're, as Marissa said, a leading digital innovation agency. And also, as she said, our skills we like to use for the benefit of people, place, and planet. And indeed, we have a history and a passion for creating digital solutions that help to foster deeper connections between people and places. And the common threads that run through our work are creativity and innovation, underpinned by a strong co-design and collaborative ethos. So the Welsh socialist writer and academic Raymond Williams once said, "To be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing." One could be forgiven for feeling despair at the current state of the world. It has been, unsurprisingly, a persistent theme at 3 recent conferences I've attended, with speakers painting a rather stark picture through the lenses of health and well-being, the economy, and the environment. At the start of this talk, I'm drawing upon some of the information shared at these conferences to provide us with some context. So we'll have some shared references that act as a foundation. And while it's not necessarily uplifting, it is useful. So to start with, Professor Sir Michael Marmot opened the Healthy City Design International conference, where I was speaking in a parks focus session. He started with a contextual analysis of the poor health of UK citizens today. He presented a wealth of evidence that showed significant declines in both public sector expenditure and in public health since 2010. And data showed that increases in life expectancy at birth have stalled in England, with health for the poorest people getting worse. Amid a decade of the government's austerity programme, public expenditure shrank from 42% of GDP in 2009-10 to 35% by 2018-19. And I'm sure you'll agree that that is enormous. And real wages are lower today than 18 years ago and have fared much worse than our peer nations. And total government spending on healthcare per person, taking age into account, has been falling year on year since 2010. So we're spending less than ever before. Austerity saw a decreasing amount of money being made available to local government. Nearly 1 in 5 English councils are at risk of bankruptcy, according to the Financial Times, and as we're seeing playing out today. And then without London's economic might, the national GDP drops by 14%, which means that we are as poor outside of London as the poorest US state, which is Mississippi. So as Michael Marmot pointed out, We are a poor country with some rich people. Professor Dieter Helm, meanwhile, used his keynote at the University of Oxford to focus on the climate crisis, during which he said, anyone who thinks we are cracking climate change must come from Mars. Indeed, 80% of the world's fuel is still fossil fuel, and sustainable innovations, they're not without their own issues. Helm also honed in on the poor state of Britain's core infrastructure after 30 years of privatisation. And here he's talking about energy networks, water utilities, natural ecosystems, and a decent climate, to name but a few. He argued that we need to look ahead to the next generation and ensure we can hand over working and viable infrastructure to them. If we can do that, which will involve creating more frameworks and increasing investment, then we have done all we can, he argues, to enable resilience for future generations. And that leads me nicely to focus on the focus of this talk, which is our green infrastructure, specifically our parks and urban green spaces. Now, according to Natural England, parks and green spaces deliver an estimated £6.6 billion of health, climate change, and environmental benefits every year. They are critical neighbourhood infrastructure that, counterintuitively, face uncertain futures. And this talk explores how place-based digital technology and data can enhance park resilience, improve the health and well-being of local communities, and help us to achieve many of our local, regional, and national policy objectives. In its report evaluating 26 years of investing around £1 billion in 900 public parks and urban green spaces, the National Lottery said, parks are more than just the green oases, beautifying our towns and cities and providing a home for nature. Parks are one of our most used publicly funded services. They form the heart of local community life, providing space for people to exercise, to improve their physical health and mental well-being, to play, chat, eat, gather, protest, and relax. Parks are essential pieces of community infrastructure. I repeat, parks are essential pieces of community infrastructure, green infrastructure and community infrastructure. Which makes this headline all the more unbelievable and heartbreaking. Now, at this point, I want to focus on examples of the policy landscape that connects parks and public health. We know that nature, human health, and well-being are intrinsically linked. England's Environmental Improvement Plan has a goal for everyone to live within a 15-minute walk of a green or blue space. The green social prescribing is embedded within the NHS long-term plan. Public Health England says community assets improve the health and the quality of the community. They include physical assets such as public green space. Accessible green space is highlighted as a determinant of health in the Department of Health and Social Care's major conditions strategy. And the Department for Education, Sustainability and Climate Change strategy draws on learning in the natural environment for physical and mental health. And then the Office of Health Improvement and Disparities recommends that local authorities consider local green spaces as critical assets, as infrastructure for maintaining and supporting health and well-being in local communities. So just a couple of reports to point you to. The first is Natural England's review that highlights nature exposure causing reduction in stress, improving cognitive capacity, increased physical activity, reduced exposure to environmental hazards, and social contact. And the National Lottery report into its parks funding, often working in partnership with the many local authority owners, stated impact as improving health and well-being, reducing isolation and loneliness, increasing public participation, tackling inequalities, connecting people with nature, and growing local economies. So we know that good health for all of us, irrespective of means, is core to a just society. We also know that health is unequally distributed and that improving health, particularly for those in worst health, is necessary for people to thrive and reach their potential. The Institute for Public Policy Research states we should create better health for its own sake, but also to address the biggest weaknesses in the UK economy. And according to the ONS, 2.6 million working age adults are not in work due to ill health, and 7.5 million people are on NHS waiting lists. So thus far, we've established that the UK's overall health status is poor when compared to our peer countries. And we've established that there are many local, regional, and national policies that call for greater connection between our parks and our citizens to enhance public health and well-being, and research showing positive impacts of people being exposed to nature. So now let's turn our attention to how we might enhance the resilience of our parks, bearing in mind that earlier headline about cutting funding to parks. What do we mean when we say park resilience? Well, basically, we're talking about an holistic approach that considers ecological, social, and operational factors to ensure that parks can thrive and continue to provide essential benefits to communities in the face of significant uncertainty. There are more than 27,000 public parks and green spaces across the UK, and these spaces range from large principal parks with many facilities and amenities to small neighbourhood pocket parks. They are vital public assets in our urban environments, places that can support community, promote good health and well-being, encourage biodiversity, and so much more. And research has shown that parks mitigate urban heat island effects, with data suggesting this may have an effect up to 1 kilometre from the park boundary. And the importance of parks and green spaces, if you're not convinced already, is further reinforced by their inclusion in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, when they say by 2030, so just 6 years away, people, provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public spaces, in particular for women and children, older persons, and persons with disabilities. Now, when I searched the web for local authority strategies for parks and green spaces, there were many to be found, which is absolutely encouraging. But of the first dozen that I read, I noticed a glaring absence. There was not one mention of digital technology. And to me, this seems very strange. As whomever you are in the session, the places that you shape and those you visit will now be interwoven with technology. For instance, these digital platforms and apps, and many others, enable us to plan a trip, to find our way, to order food, to pay for services, to find people nearby, and so forth. So in our neighborhoods and town centers, there is an intimate connection between people and place, technology and data. Some places more than others, but we can see the clear and swift direction of travel for all, especially when we know that there's much research going on to 6G at the moment, and some people even talking about 7G. So why aren't local authorities embracing the strengths of place-based digital technologies of digital placemaking as part of their strategies for parks and green spaces. It's not as if there is no history of work happening at the intersection of parks, people, and tech. Parks and green spaces have played a big part in Calvium's history. Indeed, exploring parks through the combined lenses of people, place, technology, and data is an expertise sweet spot. For instance, we've worked with Bristol City Council on the Parkhive app, which showcases the city's parks and green spaces, and collaborated in developing NetPark, the world's first digital art park. And last year, we provided digital placemaking consultancy for the National Trust. And earlier this year, we supported the City of Edinburgh Council's desire to provide new sensitive lighting in some of their parks and green spaces. So clearly, digital technology is not separate from place. It's embedded. Technology is an integral aspect of place. Critically, you can't opt out because you will experience the impacts of technology even if you haven't ordered a meal through Deliveroo or rented an e-scooter. And in addition, when it comes to the connected environments or smart cities, you can't opt out from being an active participant. Now, earlier I mentioned digital placemaking, and just to say that's a term that we use when we're talking about the intersection of people, place, technology, and data. We call that digital placemaking. And it's concerned with location-specific digital products, services, or experiences that enhance people's relationships with a particular location, such as our green spaces. And digital placemaking is people and place-led and uses the strengths of technology and data to make the experiences of places better. And a wealth of practitioners have adopted digital placemaking to create new ways for people to engage with physical places. For instance, by playing augmented reality, street games such as Pokemon Go, citizen reporting of local issues, including potholes and broken street lighting, and creating safe city apps where girls and women can show where they feel safe and unsafe in the city. And they've created 3D printed interactive creatures, including bees, otters, and as you can see here, garden gnomes that you can chat to using your smartphone. And these ones are stationed in a range of locations, or were stationed at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. And if we go to Australia, there's an area there that manages around 165,000 urban trees in streets and in parks, with an estimated value of around 370 million Australian dollars in structural asset value. And the council launched a data dashboard to share information with the community on the work that's going on to make that place a greener place to live. On this slide, we show that we are capturing and analysing environmental data, maybe with the Pollution Explorers Toolkit. We're leveraging IoT, so Internet of Things and edge computing, to design and develop smart sensors that monitor bat activity, again in the Olympic Park in London, and participating in urban planning projects that help citizens reshape their neighbourhoods using Minecraft software as a creative design tool, and many, many more. So whilst diverse in nature, a common characteristic across these projects is the ability of digital technology to foster deeper or different relationships between people and places that they inhabit. Last year, I had the privilege of leading some fascinating research for the NHS in North East London. And the research explored how digital placemaking can enhance the physical and mental health and emotional well-being of North East London stakeholder communities. And in particular, it revealed how digital placemaking can be incorporated into the strategic planning of future healthcare facilities and their neighbouring public spaces. And importantly for this project, and I wish to share with you. When over 1,000 residents were asked about their interest in new digital technologies to support health and well-being in public space, as you can see here, they were really, really positive. So having just seen a range of digital placemaking projects and hearing of public interest in engaging with locative technologies for health and well-being, I remind you of the total number of mentions of tech that I found in my quick search of local authority green strategies. 0. So clearly we are missing an opportunity. It makes sense to reimagine green space and view its constituent parts as people, place, nature, and technology, and to do so through the lens of health and well-being. We've seen that our public spaces are evolving rapidly. They are at the forefront of a technological revolution. So now let's expand our thinking to consider connected places and smart cities. Nowadays, we have a raft of place-based digital capabilities when devices such as sensors, such as cameras, motors, and microphones are placed in the physical world and connected to the internet. And this is called the Internet of Things and is the basis of connected places or smart cities and other terms you may be familiar with. And applications include monitoring soil moisture to activate sprinkler systems or smart street lights, and of course, an abundance of surveillance cameras and much more. Now, members of the public rarely have the opportunity to meaningfully explore how such new tech is applied in public spaces. And nor do they have the opportunity to make informed decision about their application. Indeed, rarely do we see members of the built environment professions or related policymakers involved in the conversations and decision-making around connected places in local areas. And yet, it's really, really important that we focus on positive opportunities that they can bring to improve health and well-being for all. It's vital, too, that we understand the potential unintended consequences so that we can make informed and good decisions about our environments. Here I'm leaning on the words of Professor Mike Berners-Lee, who, echoing his brother Tim, said, "We need to be much better at discerning which technologies are going to help us and which aren't. We need a whole new relationship with technology." And that relationship is a place where we collectively start to understand the context, which includes our lack of understanding in society about how the whole tech system works. A lack of unified standards, a lack of regulation of privacy, understanding the AI industry, the fact of data bias, the environmental impact of digital technologies, the power of big technologies, and indeed who owns location data now and who may own it in the future. So all UK local authorities must invest time, energy, and money to explore how digital technologies can support health and well-being in their parks, in our parks and green spaces. And yes, I am suggesting this at a time when local authorities are struggling, but we can't wait. And remember Michael Marmot and Dieter Helm's messages at the top of this talk. And there's plenty of ways to move forward. Look at the Future Parks Accelerator, for instance. So here's a model that is a collaboration between the National Trust, Heritage Fund, and Department for Levelling Up, and around 9 local authorities. But from what I can find out online, does not include digital technologies. We know partnership is key, and we know that where there's a will, there's a way. At which point, let's turn to the World Health Organization, who say urban green space interventions need to be planned and designed with the local community and the intended green space users. This will ensure the derivation of benefits for the local residents and will aid the delivery of interventions that serve the needs of the community, especially in deprived areas. Unfortunately, in the UK, we have many different community groups, professional engagement facilitators, all sorts of potential stakeholder partners who could be called upon really quickly to provide the bedrock for a serious program that explores how digital technologies can support our health and well-being in parks and the neighbouring public spaces. So clearly, I'm committed to making this happen and need you to commit to joining me. Thank you. And let's start a conversation now in the chat where Marissa is waiting for us.